year, the sea level rises,
setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control.
10 hottest years ever measured.
Climate change is our single greatest security threat.
You are failing us.
Governments know it. Even the United States military knows it. None of this is rhetoric, and none of it is hysteria. It is fact.
House on fire.
Welcome to the House on Fire podcast, powered by the Clio Institute. I'm your host, Dania Toledo, coming to you from ground zero of the climate crisis, Miami, Florida. And today we have an exciting guest.
My name is Ron Magill. I have been working at originally Crandon Park Zoo, then Miami Metro Zoo, and now Zoo Miami. I'm in my 44th year. But I've got to say that I'm here as a private citizen, even though that's been my life, is working at the zoo.
All right, awesome. So let's get straight into the thick of it. What is Miami Wilds, and why do you oppose this project?
Miami Wilds is a project of a developer's project to bring a water park to Zoo Miami, to the parking lot area that is adjacent to the Pine Rockland at Zoo Miami. And I want to make this very clear. This was originally voted on back in 2006, and I voted for it. As a matter of fact, I was part of the phone tree where I've been calling the public, yeah, we need to support this. This is going to be great, blah, 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 blah. We have learned so much since 2006. We've had some of our best researchers, our best conservationists go into that forest, understand that the Pine Rockland is the single most critically endangered habitat in the state of Florida. The tract at Zoo Miami is the largest tract outside of Everglades National Park. There is less than 5% of what originally was Pine Rockland left in Florida. So it is so critically endangered. It is also the most biodiverse habitat. It's a fancy word for saying there are more different animals, more different species of things living in there than any other habitat in the state of Florida.
Wow.
So it's incredibly valuable. We are discovering new species in there every year. And I'm not talking about like little phytoplankton types. I'm talking about like big spiders, butterflies, things like that.
Wow.
New species we're discovering there every year. So this is really a critically important habitat. And what we've learned is that one of the animals that lives there is the bonneted bat, the Florida bonneted bat. This is the most endangered bat in the United States. It's the largest bat in the United States. And we have learned that it uses that parking lot area as a foraging area. It is critical to its survival. Miami Wilds wants to build a water park there that is going to obstruct that area, is going to bring in all kinds of noise pollution. It is going to basically take away from the bat's ability to forage. And, what they're doing from the Miami Wilds, group, their narrative is trying to say, well, we're not building in the pinelands. We're not cutting down any trees. We're just building on a parking lot. It's not just a parking lot. And people need to understand this. And the way I can explain it is this. They'll have you say, well, you can't say that pavement is critical habitat. Well, we're not saying that the bats are walking on the ground, okay? When you claim critical habitat, it's a cone of life. For instance, if you claim a certain part of the ocean as critical habitat, it's not just the ocean floor. It's that column of life all the way to the top, you see. There are fish that'll go back and forth there that'll never touch the bottom floor of the ocean. They need that habitat to live, to survive. It's the same thing with these bats. These bats come out there, they forage at night. That parking lot has now basically kind of replaced what used to be prairie, what used to be open air area, see? So now those things are replaced by things like nice big dark parking lots, golf courses, big open parks. That's what the bats use to forage. So they're foraging in there, and Miami Wilds will say, well, like I said, we're not hurting the forest, we're just building on pavement. So let me give you this analogy. You can protect my house. If I live in my house and you can protect, nothing can come into my house, you're not cutting down anything in my house or anything like that. But if you cut down or remove the roads, the access that I have to go to Publix to get the groceries that I need to live, remove my access to go to work, to do the things that I need to survive, to take care of my family, I have two options. One is to move, the other is to die. These animals have no option to move because they're already living in the most critically endangered habitat in the state of Florida.
Already so little of it left
Exactly.
behind.
There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. So I want people to understand. And I got to preface this by also saying, I believe extremism in any form is dangerous. Okay, let me make this clear. If there's a roach in my house, I step on it, it's dead. Okay, I'm not one of
It's
those
an
people.
intruder.
I don't go, oh my God, it's a little roach, I gotta take care of it, let me put it outside. No. That's not me. Okay, the roach is dead. It's in the wrong place, wrong time. It's not an endangered species. It's an animal that can spread disease. I'm not gonna have it in my house. Okay?
Correct.
I am not one of those extremists. I have dedicated my life to conservation. I didn't go to work at the zoo almost 44 years ago to work for an attraction. My focus has always been to work for a conservation organization that is protecting animals in the wild where they belong. And that's another thing I want to say that might surprise some people. I would never, ever support taking an animal out of the wild and putting it in captivity, unless it's a last-ditch effort to save that animal's life or to save the species. And zoos have done a good job at that on several occasions. I can give you examples like the California condor, the Arabian oryx, the black-footed ferret, the red wolf. These are animals that would be extinct were not for zoos, breeding them under human care and releasing them back into the wild. All the ones you see in the wild today are animals that can be descended back to zoo animals. Without zoos, they'd be gone. They'd be extinct. And that saying, that extinction is forever is very powerful, because the bottom line is this, and what I'm trying to get people to understand, developers wave a lot of money. They make a lot of promises. They make a lot of projections. I want to remind people about Parrot Jungle that turned into Jungle Island and what a boondoggle that became. Okay, we at Zoo Miami were promised $2 million when that moved over there to Watson Island. Oh, this is what we're going to get and we promised you $2 million. That was many, many years ago. Do you know how much we have gotten out of that $2 million?
I'm going to
like my father would say, ni un centavo. Okay, not 1 cent has come to the zoo.
That's crazy.
And what happened was they never made the attendance figures they projected. And basically, they kind of failed. That original one just sold out, and now they're trying to restructure the whole thing. It became a boondoggle. I can tell you that is exactly where I feel this Miami Wilds is going to go. Because, first of all, water parks in a place like Miami where you have all these beaches, all these public pools.
Doesn't make the most sense.
It's not something that's going to be a draw like in Orlando, okay, where you're in the middle of the center of the state and you got to know the beach. It's a different situation. But having said that, also, by bringing this water park, they're going to say, once the water park's there, we're going to charge for parking for everyone. Even people going to the zoo where parking's free now, they want to charge them a minimum beginning at $9 a car.
Oh,
and what they're saying by saying beginning, they're telling you already, well, that's going to go up. That's going to go up. And how much of that is actually coming to the zoo? I can tell you this, from what I read in the lease agreement, none of it. It's going to be going to the county. Some of it is going to be going to the county, but none of it's coming to the zoo. And what that is going to do is that's going to parasitize people. 70% of the people who come to the zoo today are people that live in South Florida. They're not tourists that are coming out of town, spending big bucks doing things. They're people who come there as a family to enjoy something in an affordable manner. By creating $9 per car just for parking,
you're already blocking people from even being able to enjoy that.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that I want people to understand, that this is not simply building on a parking lot. It's building on an area that is critical habitat for the survival of endangered species. Zoo Miami is a conservation organization. That's one of the pillars of Zoo Miami, conservation. The zoo has been silenced. Okay. Downtown management has told the zoo, you are forbidden from speaking about Miami Wilds.
Oh, that's crazy.
And that is one of the things that just burned my cork. And I said, you can't forbid me from saying anything as a private citizen.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I have First Amendment rights, and that's why I'm here as a private citizen. And the answer I get, well, everybody knows who you are. I go, that's not my fault. Okay, so take that as you wish with a grain of salt. I'm telling you right here. And I can tell you all my other peers as private citizens feel the same way I do. And so many of them have come to me in off hours and said, thank you. Thank you for doing this, for fighting for us, because they feel the same way. We've all gone there to work for this, to protect wildlife. And, for me, it will be a badge of honor. There's some people that have been saying, well, if this becomes critical habitat now, it's gonna take away from the zoo's ability to expand, to build new things.
Why would the zoo want to expand and build new
Thank
things?
Thank you. I said, you know what? Instead of looking at it as a challenge, why don't you look at it as a badge of honor and say, no, Zoo Miami now is the guardian of this land.
It's a steward for the land.
Exactly. It's a steward.
Animals.
We should be proud to say we are located in critical habitat. We should walk the walk and say, this is what we do. We're here to protect this. And I can tell you, I look at you and your generation, and you inspire me, because I've seen how this generation is upswelled. When I wrote that letter that got this whole Pandora's box opened, and I sent it to the media and I sent it to every one of the commissioners, I'm going to be honest with you. I wrote that letter more for me than anything else because I didn't think it had any chance. I have been used over the 40 plus years of just this rubber stamping of development dollars saying they always get their way. They have their big paid lobbyists. They come in there, they go to all the commissioners, they lobby the commissioners. We don't have that, I'm just at heart a zookeeper. That's all I am. But I said, I've got to do this. You know why? Because the people I really respect, the conservationists, the people I work with who are so passionate about wildlife, how would I answer to them by not saying anything? Because by not saying anything,
You're complicit.
I'm complicit. I'm complicit, and I would be a hypocrite as the conservationist that I've tried to portray myself as to the community for over 40 years. I think the community looks to me to be that voice. And there's people say, Ron, you could lose your job. You're going to really tick off some big, heavy hitters up there. At the end of the day, I don't want this to sound trivial because it's not. You cannot let money or your job overshadow your moral compass and what you're doing. Correct. And what I've told people over and over is I'd rather have the anger of some than the respect of none. And that's what I feel I would have. So I went through this for my own self-respect, figuring, listen, it's going to pass anyway, but at least I can say, look, I tried, guys. I might lose my job, but at least I leave with my head held high. I'm not going to cower to this, administration that says, this is what you have to do. Why? Because I say so. No, my dad used to tell me that when I was 3. Okay,
You're not 3 anymore.
I'm not 3 anymore. Okay, you're going to tell me why, and if you don't have a good reason why, and then I heard reasons like, well, because listen, this money could be coming in here, and that just totally told me exactly where they're coming from. It told me that conservation's for sale. So what you're saying is for the right price, we should do it.
Yeah.
No,
that's
it's
unacceptable.
It's unacceptable because you know what? If we lose this stuff, all the money in the world isn't going to bring it back.
Not at all.
And there are people that are going to say to you, Ron, come on, it's a bat, it's a butterfly, it's, a snake and some tortoises.
The average person doesn't really understand the importance that these animals play in the grand scheme of an ecosystem. It's a living, breathing organism, if we want to say it that way.
The way I try to explain it to people, it's the bats that eat insects equal to their weight almost every night. Insects that can spread tremendous disease, cause millions of dollars in agricultural damage. If you don't have that balance of predators like bats controlling those insects, there's a huge problem that can occur there. The butterflies that pollinate the plants, that produce the food, that feed so many species that are connected to so many other things. The gopher tortoises that live in these holes and are seed dispersers. What they eat, they poop, and they walk around, and they create the biodiversity in the forest. And I don't want to get overcomplicated in this, but it's all connected, you see? And by protecting these things, we're protecting ourselves. I use another analogy. You can take a plane. Let's look at a plane, and let's say every rivet that puts that plane together is a different species. And it's flying. One rivet becomes extinct. One species, rivet breaks off. Plane still flies. Everybody says, see, no problem, right? No problem. Another rivet breaks off. It's starting to shake a little bit. But it's still flying. Still flying. One day, one rivet is going to break off, and the wing's going to break off, and the plane is going to crash. And there's no one who can predict what that is. It would take a very, very naive, almost blind and deaf person to not see what is happening in our world today with climate change. And I'm not talking about, well, it's not just global warming. No, it's not. It's climate
not
change.
just global warming.
It's intensity of frequency of storms. It's droughts. It's floods. It's fires. All these things that we see. It's earthquakes. We're seeing so many things happening now. People need to wake up.
And with the frequency that they're happening at too, which isn't something that most people in their lifetimes can say, oh yeah, I experienced 6 different storms in like a 2-year span when I was in my teens. Like that didn't happen
in my lifetime, I never experienced a hurricane until there was this Hurricane David. And I said, geez, that's a hurricane? That's nothing. It was just like a lot of rain and some wind. And then came Hurricane Andrew. The storm of a lifetime. And since then, how many of those types of storms have we had? Okay? Think about this, folks. There's an old saying that says we've not inherited this earth from our parents. We're borrowing it from our children. I'm the father of 2 kids. I feel that we have a moral obligation to pass this world on to you the same way that we found it or better. we're making strides. We're making a difference. There's some animals that are coming back. We cannot take steps backwards. We cannot be kind of sucked in by this money grab, that people get. They want that instant gratification. Well, I can make this money. But look down the road what it's going to do. And that's why I'm fighting this. I'm fighting it at the risk of a 40-plus year career and maybe ending up, without anything. But at least my own conscience saying that I tried.
That's awesome. And honestly, I think that is so important because the way that you mentioned that there was money involved, most people think once money is involved, there's not really much that you can do. But there's a difference between corporate lobbying, where people have the money, and then public lobbying. You yourself as a person have all the power in your hands to go to these commissioners just as a person, because ultimately you're the ones voting them in.
Exactly.
They're the ones that have to listen to you. And as a private citizen, your voice means a lot more than what other people might think.
And I will tell you, I really have high hopes for this commission. I have been pleasantly surprised in speaking. Understand these are 13 new commissioners from when this project was originally voted on. And in my conversations with them, I have been very pleasantly surprised. Whereas I told you when I started, I said this had no chance. It's going to just maybe be trying, but I had to do what I had to do and say at least I tried. I firmly believe we have a chance now. I believe this could be historic because I can tell you that in my lifetime, this will be the first time, if we get the votes from these commissioners to stop this park from being built at that property, this will be the first time in my lifetime that commissioners have prioritized environment over developer dollars.
That's awesome.
And that could be a huge opportunity for this commission to tell the community, we hear you, we understand the value of this incredible natural treasures that we have here in South Florida, and we're here to protect that. There's another old saying, I think I might have said it already, that when the people lead, the leaders will follow. I have been so incredibly inspired by the people that have called me and contacted me and said, how can we help? We had no idea. And that was the problem. No one knew. That's what got me so angry. And I warned them. I warned all these people downtown. I said, listen, I'm going to pull the trigger on this thing. If this thing goes on a vote, and they looked at me like, well, you can't speak on. I said, you can't tell me what I can do. I'm telling you, I'm going to pull the trigger on this thing. I'm going to call every media contact I have. I'm going to do everything I have to do to pull the trigger on this thing if you guys don't say something about this. And nobody said anything. They said, oh, let the commission. And that's what they were hoping for, that this was going to go through. The commissioners weren't even aware of everything. Commissioners that I've spoken to said, yes, they weren't aware. And I said, that's part of the problem.
That's part of the problem.
And now that they're aware, I'm telling you, their eyes have opened. I have gotten such inspiration from these commissioners that I have spoken to. I'm not saying this is like everyone saying, oh, you're right. No, but I'm telling you, they have given me hope. These commissioners now have shown me that it's a different commission. And I think we've got a chance. And if we do this, like I said, it'll be historic. And the greatest thing it'll do is give a message, especially to this young generation. I work with this young man, Luca Martinez, who did this incredible video.
Super awesome video.
Okay.
I've seen it all over the internet.
So, and that connected so many young people because he had so many followers, and we did a video together, the latest one we just did together. And it made such an impact. And what's happening now is they're realizing, yes, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. And listen, I want to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of social media. I consider for the great part the toilet bowl of the internet. But having said that, when used properly, it can empower, especially your generation. Okay, generation. These people 18 and above who can vote now, they understand the power they have. They have a voice. It gives them a voice, and they've utilized this voice. I can't tell you how many people have called me, and we're organizing something. There's going to be a huge demonstration on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, at Zoo Miami. So put that in your calendar. If you're free that day, I'll be giving information out, but we're going to have everybody out there, and I'm going to be the first one in line holding the sign at Zoo Miami, and everybody will probably know who I am there, and I don't care because I'm taking the day off, and I'm there as a private citizen, and I'm going to make very, very clear how important that property is, and I want to make it very, very clear that is the intention of everyone's a big word, the overwhelming majority of everyone who works at the zoo, that they want to be known as the guardians of that property. They want to be known as the people who stood up to protect that at a time when everybody had written it off.
That's honestly so awesome, and so glad that we have the inside scoop on this. Ooh, I'll let you know right now. I'll be right there as well. I'm planning on it.
I appreciate that.
Can you give us some background on Miami Wilds from back when it started to its present stance today?
Sure. When it started, it was promoted as this huge theme park. As a matter of fact, it was originally taken over by 20th Century Fox. They were going to make it like another Disney. I mean, this was going to be this, almost $1 billion project there. Okay.
I almost can't imagine that being in Miami now.
I know. And so, but then they realized, listen, this isn't going to work here. The financing wasn't there. They pulled out. Miami Wilds came in and said, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to build this big thing. It was a $100 million plus project. That has scaled back and scaled back and scaled back because they've had all these lawsuits brought about to them. Some of the lawsuits have been dismissed, but one in particular is still effective. And it's very important because it's a lawsuit brought against the National Park Service. Because the National Park Service was supposed to do environmental evaluations of endangered species and critical habitat before signing over the lease for development.
Oh.
They never did that. And when they were sued in court, they flat out admitted it. They said, yep, we messed up. We didn't do it. We just turned over the lease.
Wow.
So right there, you got a huge red flag. You're saying, how can you do that?
And they're the National Park Service.
And they're the National Park Service. So the National Park Service realized they made a mistake. We're going to have to readdress this thing. And that's what a lawsuit that's still in court. That may play out. But my point here is that regardless of the lawsuits, that has been scaled down because they've been trying to avoid any kind of lawsuit, okay? But what they've done is they scaled it down now to literally half of what it was when they went up for the first lease vote. And that is important to understand because they're still promising the same economic, benefit. Well, how do you get the same economic benefit when you cut a project in half? Okay? And they're still getting $13.5 million from the county for the same project that's now been cut in half. And our question is, why is the county offering the same amount? Why don't they cut that amount in half if they've cut the project in half? You see? And there's so many things. Look, I'm going to bring up another thing that hasn't even been brought up. The first time it's being brought up is right here on this podcast. I want you to listen to this and use your common sense. Have you ever been to a big public pool?
A big public pool? Myself, nah.
Even any pool. You go to any pool.
Yeah.
You ever smell the chlorine?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Smell the chlorine. Go to University of Miami pool and you smell the chlorine because chlorine is used to keep that water going. Do you have any idea how much chlorine is used for something like a water park? It's huge. Chlorine gas is heavier than air. The reason why you smell it all the time when you go up to a pool is because it lays low. It doesn't go up into the air. It lays low.
So it lays at about our level.
Exactly. Okay? There's going to be a tremendous amount of chlorine gas produced by that, which might not be harmful to humans, but it's toxic to animals. And if that chlorine gas catches a breeze and is blown into the forest, it is toxic for more animals than you could imagine. And people are not thinking about that. People haven't even addressed that. But I want people to understand that. There are so many side things going on here with, collateral damage associated with this Miami Wilds water park. So back to your original question, it's now scaled down to this water park. The hotel and the spa were removed. Okay, they want it, and we went crazy on this. Absolutely no way. You can't have a 24-hour operation there because it keeps the lights going on. It has people coming in 20. You can't have that there because we have our own animals in the zoo.
Yeah.
We have to have some quiet there. And something that's really important to also understand is that the commissioners that were originally sold on this were given, I'm going to use the word misinformation to avoid using the word lie. Okay, because the parks director got in front of the commission, and then Commissioner Cava, who's now our mayor, she specifically asked in a meeting, and this is recorded on a Zoom, Director Nardi, what's the situation with the lighting there? Because Commissioner Cava was concerned, knowing that lighting all night is going to affect these animals. You can't have the light pollution could be dangerous for these animals. It's that detrimental to them. And Director Nardi said, no, the parking lot is lit. The parking lot has never been lit.
Which is the whole reason why the bats are there.
Exactly. The parking lot has never been lit. If we have a special event, we bring in temporary lighting and we take it out as soon as the event is over. But there's never been permanent lighting in the parking lot. And Director Nardi implied that there was. And that is information that if you're a commissioner, say, okay, well, they already got lighting. So lighting's no longer an issue. Of course it's an issue.
It's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue.
Probably one of the main
And I want to know
issues.
why that hasn't been called out. Why somebody hasn't said, Commissioner Nardi, Director Nardi, why did did you say that there's lighting in the parking lot, implying that there's lighting in the parking lot when the parking lot is dark, is dark, has always been dark.
That's very important.
Okay, so these types of things, there has just been too many things that were kind of like try to push under the radar. And, you know, I've been told by some people that I trust very well that work downtown that there's a couple of people there that, you know, quote unquote, want to light me on fire. And you know what? They had already done that. They had already lit me on fire, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I am not afraid to lose my job. I won't quit. I'll fight it. They come after me. I'm going to explain something to you again, and I'm going to put it in a different perspective. They're going to come after me, and I almost want them to do that, because you know what happens when they do that? It's like a lawyer who makes the mistake of putting the wrong witness on the stand, and now he can be cross-examined. Okay? Put me on the stand and cross-examine me. I'm telling you, enough is enough. This has to stop. I think the commission understands this. They have been awakened to some of the things that have been going on. The fact that our top scientists, our conservation scientists that have dedicated their lives to doing these studies, to studying these animals, have been told they are not allowed to speak to anyone about this. It's ludicrous. And let me tell you what happened. So then I said, no, this is, listen, so I wrote to commissioners. I said, please ask our director of conservation and research to ask him questions, because he wanted to be asked. If he's asked by a commissioner, he's going to answer. He wanted to be asked, but he can't go out and do it on his own because he's been told he can't. And then he could be, in trouble, insubordination, right? But if he's asked by a commissioner, he's going to answer.
Yeah.
So he wants to be asked. And sure enough, a commissioner asked, I want to speak to you. So doing his due diligence, he wrote to the zoo director and said, okay, I've been asked to go meet with this director. They want to ask me questions. The response he got is, you're not allowed to meet with that director unless the parks director goes with you. I go, what? That's just classic intimidation. Why don't you trust your conservation manager to be honest and go speak to the commissioner? Why does the parks director have to be with you in that meeting? Why? I'm just asking the question. Look at the optics here, okay? This is just wrong. Enough is enough. I have, as you can see, I'm not holding back on anything. I'm done with this, and there are people that I'm trying to be their voice. I'm trying to be their voice because I'm telling you my peers feel the same way. And we just want to, you know, we hear this lip service all the time. We value our employees. We empower our employees. You know, you're not empowering them if you're not letting them speak.
That's 100% true.
And, you know, I think it's important that people understand that. I don't want people to think the zoo is in favor of this water park. The zoo is not in favor of this water park. And I say that just because of my peers who I work with, who have told me as private citizens, we are not in favor of this.
Now a little bit more about the commission. We've talked a teensy bit about the commission. There have been now 2 votes, if I'm not mistaken, regarding Miami Wilds.
2 deferrals.
2 deferrals,
specifically.
Specifically, yes. And they recently delayed that vote a second time now to extend the lease for Miami Wilds. Why do you think the purpose is for such a delay on a vote?
You know, initially I would have told you they're doing it because they think they're going to wear us out and the opposition is going to go away. I don't think that's the case any longer. I think, at least for several of the commissioners, it's because they really wanted time to look into this. They're learning something new every day, and they want to make sure they're making an informed decision. I think it may have also been on some commissioners' thing a chance to see what kind of damage control they can do. There's a couple of commissioners that are dead set for this thing. I know that their votes will never change, but I really believe now, whereas I was skeptical before. Yeah, they're going to keep deferring. They're going to think we're going to go away. We're not going away. But now I really believe that commissioners are listening. They're listening, and they're really evaluating all the facts that we're providing to them. And listen, I may be delusional, but I truly believe that we could witness history coming up with this vote.
So you said that Miami Wilds would be really close to what's called the pine rockland habitat. Can you explain what it is first off? And then why is it endangered?
Pine rockland is really what Miami was mostly made up of, thousands of years ago. As we have developed, we've kind of developed over that. I mean, the Dade County pine tree is legendary for being able to resist fire, resist termites. Okay, you have some old homes here that were made of Dade County pine that are over 100 years old that termites cannot get into because Dade County pine has adapted to this environment. Okay. With development, they came down because nobody really knew. I've got to be honest with you. If you look at the pine rockland, it just looks like a bunch of pine trees and some palmetto brush. It's not like looking at the mountains and the Rocky Mountains and all the colored leaves and all that stuff. But when you walk into that forest and you listen and you watch, you realize you're surrounded by a world of so many different things, all interconnected. Close your eyes and listen and smell. It's just this. It's another world. It has been destroyed due to development. Like I said before, the largest tract of pine rockland outside of Everglades National Park is right there at Zoo Miami. And I'm going to give you a fact here. Close to 50% of all the pharmaceuticals we use today have origins in some plant, in some tropical forest. Okay? We have only closely examined 10% of the plants in those forests. If we have found half of the origins of the medicines that we use in 10% of the plants, what's in the other 90%? I'm a firm believer there is a cure to everything we face in some forest, in some place, in some plant, in some living thing that is part of that very careful balance of our planet. You think about what has happened recently in these pandemics that we've had, whether it be, the COVID, whether it be AIDS, whether it be Ebola. These are all pandemics, epidemics that can be traced to animals that were ripped out of a forest and exposed to an area they should never have been brought into. They've gone into a forest that is carefully balanced, very carefully balanced, and they've disturbed that balance, and they've had things go awry. And you see how fast it's spread now. The Earth is not some infinite space. It's a very finite space, and we cannot continue on this trajectory. The United Nations came out with a nonpartisan study several years ago that said if we continue on this trajectory that we're on today, within 50 years, 1 million species of wildlife is going to go extinct. The world is changing. And I'm not against change. I'm just against this accelerated change that we're causing due to greed.
And that's really the crux of it. The whole reason why there's a lack of, I don't want to say just political will, but let's just say a will in general to protect the ecosystems we have, the planet that we have, protect the futures for my generation and everyone else after us. That lack of will to do all that really is just amounts to greed, is what it seems like. And it's truly sad, but I know that there are people like yourself and others in my generation beyond before us that are really going to be pushing to make the change and protect what we have.
I am very inspired by your generation because I have seen, I say this until I'm blue in the face, but when I was a kid, I never heard about recycling. I mean, I drove a car that was the biggest, baddest hot rod in the world. I think got like negative 7 miles to the gallon. You drive a car like that today and you're going to get dirty looks, right? What kind of carbon footprint are you leaving with that monster gas sucking machine?
I'd be looking crazy.
Exactly, okay? If you see people, take a piece of trash and throw it out of their car, they'll get killed by your generation because they're passionate now. Now it's cool to drive a Prius, drive an electric car, do the recycling, watch your garbage, do composting. That's a change in culture. And that's so important for what this planet needs, is a change in culture.
So it seems like you have a lot of hope that this whole Miami Wilds dispute will likely go in favor of protecting the environment. In the off chance that for some reason the commissioners vote otherwise and Miami Wilds ends up being moved forward to develop, what are your next steps?
You know, I never thought I would say this, but if I find that what the commissioners were telling me, they were just telling me because they thought that's what I wanted to hear and then acted differently from what they were telling me, I mean, the only thing I can think of doing is running for office myself.
Wow.
Just running for office myself, even though I swore I would never get into politics. But if I have to, I'll run for office myself, because if I can't make a difference this way, maybe I can make a difference from the inside. But I'm believing that's not going to be the case. I have been so inspired by the reception I've had from these commissioners and the response. We shall see on December 12th if they are going to do what they say.
Awesome. And then before we end, is there anything else you'd like to say about climate change in general, Miami Wilds, or just anything else?
I don't want to come off as being hopeless. We've got to always have hope. We can always make a difference. We can make a change. It's got to start somewhere. The fact that we're doing this podcast, the fact that you think I was worth speaking to for however long we've been speaking, is inspiring to me. It really is, because it tells me people care. People want to listen. People want to hear what's going on here. I realize that I have ruffled some very powerful feathers, and I'm ready to pay the price for that. But if it means that I got to look for a job somewhere, I've got to do something else, at least I hope my legacy will be that people will say, you know what, I might not have agreed with him, but at least I respect him for standing up for what he believed in, for speaking for those who could not speak. I'm willing to take the bullet for those who can't, because my peers have given me the opportunity to have the greatest career I could have ever dreamed of as a kid. Traveling around the world, working with wildlife, working with them. I want them to know that I will always stick up for them, and the people above me will never be more important to me than they are.
Wow. I really have no other words. Thank you so much for coming on here. You are a very beloved face in this community. Let me just tell you, I grew up watching you on Sábado Gigante every other Saturday that you'd be on there. Like, truly, it is so nice to know that someone like yourself that has really put so much of your life and dedicated it to conservation is really walking the walk and is making sure that our closest environmental ecosystems are being protected. And to know that you're in this fight really makes me feel like we have a fighting chance.
We hear all the time, think globally, act locally.
Correct.
It doesn't get more local than this.
This is about as local as we can get, folks.
There you go.
That's it for today's episode. House on Fire is powered by the Clio Institute and could not exist without the support of the Lynn and Lewis Wolfson II Foundation. The show is hosted by me, Dania Toledo, and produced by Michael Landsberg and Ryan Ners of Unicorn Fire Studios. The music is composed by the Microscopic Orchestra. If you're digging what we do here at House on Fire, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us get the word out to others about the climate crisis, and it just helps the show out a lot. Feel free to follow us on our social media on Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly known as Twitter, at the handle Clio Institute. And be sure to tune into our next episode, since we have some fascinating guests lined up for you all this season. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.